Hello and welcome to Feedback, where we discuss protected speech. Yay. I'm Adam Sessler.
I'm Steve Johnson.
I'm Casey Schreiner.
I'm Nicole Zavalich.
We've never done it that way.
I didn't know we were going to either. That's new.
Yes. All that and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes. Obviously, it's a good day. This is Monday that we're taping it. I'm not too sure when this is airing, but obviously this morning was the announcement that the California violent video game law was struck down. It really wasn't just struck down. I mean,
No.
Antonin Scalia, a man with who I agree with probably 0% of the time, except in this case, pretty much pulled a finishing move on this law. I think that might be the
Fatality,
best
maybe?
way. Yeah, I mean, it really. He wrote the majority opinion, which four other justices sided with him, and just kind of really dealt a
Dismantled.
body blow. I mean, there was, and just so everyone knows, there were two other people who were with the majority, and that was Alito and Roberts, but they wrote a concurring opinion that was a lot more narrow. They think the California law was far too broad and could be applied far too broadly, but they felt that the base sentiment of restricting the sales of these games to minors is something that still has potential. But five justices really kind of said, there's no evidence that this is harmful to minors, and this is a poorly written law, and that doesn't, hit something called strict scrutiny, which means that you have to show that there's compelling state interest, which means that they had to actually establish that these kids are at risk, or we as people in society are at risk from these kids being influenced by the violent video games and coming out with penknives and stabbing me in the ankles, which I haven't seen happen. Has that happened to you?
No, not this
No.
week.
Casey?
No, yeah, nothing other.
And Nicole?
And Pet Cemetery, the baby stabbed you in the back of the ankle. So maybe that baby.
Well, he wants to
played
cut your
video
Achilles
games.
tendon.
Yes.
Exactly.
We don't know. We don't know his
But the
motives.
Pet Cemetery took place in, 83, 84, so it's probably too much
Could have
Zaxxon.
played Atari, maybe.
Call the Supreme Court, ban it.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
I mean,
Give it
it's I mean, everything I can tell from reading this, I'm not. This is not to say that some state legislature who clearly have dealt with all of their tax revenue issues and has their economy in shape might want to pursue this, but I think the likelihood that this will even make it to the Supreme Court again, I think is highly unlikely.
I don't think it will make it to the Supreme Court again. I think that the decision was resounding dismantlement of the basis for the California law. I don't think we'll see that anymore. But I could be wrong. I'm no lawyer.
There's this one thing I want to read that Scalia wrote that he's talking about that this law was both over-inclusive in that it tried to do too many things all at once, especially in the way that it kind of said that it had to appeal to deviant or morbid interests. Morbid's a bad one because obscenity law is prurient interest, and we have obscenity laws on the books, and it's kind of clear what it is. Girly magazines, pictures. Once again, these are laws that don't have much useful application since the internet gave us the porn machines that are all of our computers.
Right.
But they wanted to expand this into violence, and so instead of prurient, it suddenly became deviant and morbid, which I think means that you could start banning goth with the morbid part. I mean, that's how broad it was. Now, he also found that it was under-inclusive in that they were solely targeting the violence in video games, and not movies and other forms of entertainment. And Scalia writes, under-inclusiveness raises serious doubts about whether the government is in fact pursuing the interest it invokes rather than disfavoring a particular speaker or viewpoint. And I think what he's, I mean, the layman's way of looking at that is he's saying, you guys don't like video games. And that really is, I mean, he really kind of called it for what it was. This is an assault on a new form of entertainment.
Yeah, and there was some interesting stuff in there too about they have basically elevated video games now to the level of books and plays and movies. So Ebert's not going to be happy about this.
No. I mean, there's a part where Scalia is talking about Dante's Inferno and Mortal Kombat all in the same sentence,
Which is awesome.
And he said that look, Dante's Inferno is better for you.
Wait, the game or the book? The novel.
The book.
Okay. Because the game had some pretty graphic things in it too.
Yeah, it's actually pretty bad in the book as well. I mean, also like the Iliad, the Odyssey.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what I thought was interesting?
The Aeneid. They draw and quarter someone within
All
the
the
first 10
foundations
pages.
of Western civilization are terrible.
Yes, and it's really bloody.
There was one section of the decision that talked about how much more visceral and immersive a video game is than the same scene in a book. And it was weird because I was thinking, isn't that awesome? Like,
Well, but
aren't you
also-
saying that it's a more powerful medium of art?
No, that was in Alito's concurring opinion.
Right, Alito's
and he was
opinion.
citing Crime and Punishment. And I felt that he was completely wrong. That I know, I mean, I've read Crime and Punishment a lot. The scene where he kills the lady is, I mean, you're in his head. I actually could find that far more affecting. You're inside the psychology of Raskolnikov's brain and what he's thinking. And it's not the rote mechanic that we actually engage in when we're playing video games. I mean, Alito, let's talk about this for a second.
Alito's the greatest,
because
man.
he starts talking.
His decision's the greatest.
He sounds more like Fox News, or where they're finding the worst of the worst without actually putting it in proper context. I mean, Postal 2 is actually one of the key games in this, and he is not even mentioning that because he went out and decided to go find JFK Reloaded. And
I know. I wrote down a whole bunch of games that he had played, and they are...
I don't know if he had played them.
Not that he had played, but he references his decision. I'll read it to you. Victims by the dozens are killed with every imaginable implement, including chainsaws, machine guns, shotguns, clubs, hammers, axes, swords, and... Victims are dismembered, decapitated, disemboweled, set on fire, chopped into little pieces. I mean, sure, that's most games.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about specifically.
But there's also things like he mentions a player can take the identity and reenact the killings carried out by the perpetrators of the Columbine High School massacre and the Virginia Tech massacre, which means that he's playing indie downloadable games or referencing them.
I mean,
Known for retail.
Let's not even call those indie downloadable games. Those are some weirdo made something and then distributed on the internet.
It's an art project as game.
Yeah. The objective of one game is to rape a mother and her daughters. I mean, we thought it might be like a Super Mario level that was a secret level.
Well,
but
World 2-2. World 2-2.
That is, I think it's actually in Peggle After Dark, right?
Here's another one. The goal is to rape Native American women. Now, we all know he's talking about Custer's Revenge, but can we as a society agree that Custer's Revenge was a long time ago?
We need to put that behind us.
Nobody cares about it.
You don't hold the movie industry responsible for Birth of a Nation. You don't go, well, what about Birth of a Nation?
Now, I have to wonder if he actually sat there and watched it. Because I wanted to think he got to sit in the same chair that Juster Potter sat in when he watched all the pornography, despite the fact that he was blind, and then said the famous thing about obscenity that he knows it when he sees it. But
you think they kept that famous chair?
But I mean, I have to wonder if he actually even watched these, because when you see the graphical fidelity of Custer's Revenge,
it's 8-bit first of all,
up against some of this other stuff, it's very hard to think that he could actually contextualize them all as the same thing.
And he probably was relying on, I'm guessing, on people's descriptions of them. And it bears repeating that he sided on the side of the industry, even pointing out these things, which is why the Supreme Court is really cool. Because, I mean, you have to be able to remove yourself from your visceral reaction, which he obviously didn't approve of it, to go, but as a legal principle, I don't buy it.
Like you said,
no matter how disgusting it is, it's still free speech.
Was slippery slope about as clear. I mean, if this law had passed, there was no reason why its same logic could not suddenly be applied to movies and to everything else out there. In addition, this meant, because remember, this was not going to be based on the ESRB ratings. This was a new rating that was going to be put on the game, which meant that there had to be an office in the state of California, up in Sacramento, that would be a censor's office. And I don't believe there's a single precedent for that, because it's contrary to the First Amendment.
Oh, right, the First Amendment. That's the one violation.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of these dissents.
Is it the one with Puritans?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good one, man.
Clarence Thomas, who doesn't write much, made a good case for why he shouldn't write much. He broke with Scalia, which is, everyone knows that he used to be just kind of like, where Scalia went, so did Thomas. That didn't happen. Casey, we learned a lot this morning about how children were raised in colonial America.
Yes. Reading this dissent, which is just a light morning reading that I do. He said specifically something about that the founding generation of framers of the Constitution did not establish the freedom of speech to include a right to speak to minors or a right of minors to access speech without going through the minor's parents or guardians. So basically, children are property. Yep. They are not to be spoken to or spoken about. And I don't know if we should be looking back at the Puritans for moral lessons, because they burned uppity women.
Yeah, no, the thing is, he does talk about what happened after the Revolution, where things loosened up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Things got a little crazy and kids were allowed to talk.
Okay, so here's supposed to be
plus, if I've learned nothing from Custer's Revenge, it's that the Puritans were bad to the Native Americans.
It's this weird daisy chain of logic where he starts invoking philosophers like Locke and Rousseau, who weren't American, but they were really popular in America. And he's using this to point out that, more or less, now this is what's the part I love the best, is that Scalia is considered a strict constitutionalist, that he goes by framers' intent and not that it's a mutable document. It's almost like Thomas said, I'll show you, strict constitutionalist, and decides to actually do a historicizing. I mean, really, it's like Stephen Greenblatt of like, 16th century morals.
He was basically playing conservative bingo with that decision.
And so he talks about like kind of what the thought process was towards raising children, and so that would be the intent of what the framers of the Constitution meant. And hence, there's just, you can uphold the law. But he doesn't, I don't think he cites case law until like 17 pages into his dissent.
It's a very nice history of child rearing in America. If you're into that.
It's a great read if you have the time.
Yeah.
As I said,
Throw it on your Kindle.
I don't know what it's like to grow up in that house.
I would imagine not very fun.
Yes. I mean, if you had to grow up with the framers' intent. Now, a decidedly more rational, but still a strange dissent was Justice Breyer. Now, worth pointing out, Breyer is probably the most liberal voice on the Supreme Court. Thomas, obviously, very, very, very far to the right. He really just seemed to believe, or wanted to believe, the research that said that games were harmful to minors, to the point that he actually went and did his own research, which is cool, but as far as I know, that doesn't really pertain, because you can only really argue the matters on record, things that have actually been filed with the court. But at the same time, he still didn't seem to know if the science was real, because, well, he didn't do the research. It was a strange wishy-washy dissent. He historically does not really have. He doesn't favor extending rights to children that mirror that of adults. But
now, I mean, haven't we by this point been through that road? Like, don't we know that violent video games don't make violent children? Hasn't that pretty much been established by now?
It's inconclusive.
Juvenile crime.
I mean, like, you can't prove that they don't. You can't prove a negative, but you certainly can't prove that they do.
I guess the one correlation that we would have is games have gotten more popular.
Yes.
Juvenile crime has dropped precipitously. So on that very, very simple, just kind of correlative standard, it's pretty hard to say that we should be rife with crime right now. Like, there should be like zombie children.
Yeah, I mean,
the window.
Are video games not just like the rock and roll music of the 50s?
Exactly. This is what I've always argued.
Yeah,
it's a matter of language. It's the same thing when you go back and you look at how comic books. Yeah, I mean, comic books, which he also talks about, in the 1950s.
Yeah,
I think that when parents see their kids, in essence, engaging in a language that they don't understand, it's kind of like when the Chinese government sees their citizens using the internet. They get a little worried that things can conspire against them, and they won't know it's coming or not. And so the quick thing to do is you call it, the demon spawn, and you try to get rid of it.
It freaks people out.
I know Scalia had mentioned that, like, why, children in high school are reading far more violent books than some of these video games. And, like, I immediately thought of, like, I had to read a book in high school called First They Killed My Father. And, like, it's about, like, genocide in Cambodia. And,
Okay.
And, like, that book
I'm sorry,
messed me up.
it was a picture book in my head.
Yeah, no, there were pictures, and they were horrible.
Richard Scarry's The First Time I Killed My Father.
No, but, like, those type of books that I had to read in high school, like, messed me up far more than any video game could have. And so,
no, because,
like, why stop at video games if this is such an issue?
And it always comes down to the sense of interactivity, that somehow you've transcended some.
But that's silly.
barrier.
Like,
No,
my
it doesn't.
imagination is so much worse than any video game could be. Like, I mean, not like in a weird way, but like
go on.
but like, I'm capable of imagining so much. You give me a sentence, and I can imagine anything. What you showed me on the screen is what you show me. Like, I can imagine anything.
And it's also this. Does not translate to this in our brains. It's the mechanics.
But even if it did with motion controls, I don't see what difference even that would make. Like if you,
it's
I'll look forward to finding out.
So I mean, it's just happy days. I mean, I think there is a sense of validation. And, as you were saying earlier, that like, no, this is protected speech. This can be grouped together with other protected speeches, which means a lot of other art out there. It's eloquently and elegantly phrased. I mean, I definitely want to encourage our audience. This is not, at least Scalia's writing, is not mumbo jumbo. It is very, very accessible.
It's good. It's a good read.
Very quotable. And I think, especially for a lot of people who've been tweeting me saying, like, how am I supposed to explain this to my friends? Because apparently a lot of people are misunderstanding. They think the court just went, young kids, go out and buy yourself a Grand Theft Auto. Because the thing is, the stores still don't have to sell it to them. But it's just
same rules apply.
Yeah,
Nothing has
They're-
changed.
they're just
Yeah,
gonna
the
go
exactly.
government
law against
cannot
it.
intrude in this
Yeah.
matter, and that this is a private business exchange, and the community standards.
And
you
that
know.
law was never enforced anywhere. I mean, it's not as if the
Yeah.
California law passed and that's what they did in California. I mean, it's never actually been applied, I don't
Yeah.
think.
And also, just so everyone knows, movie ratings do not carry the force of law. There's this assumption that everyone seems to have. ESRB is the exact same thing as the MPAA. It is at the discretion of the theater operator if he wants to let kids in to see an R-rated movie. It's different if you're waiting in line on O'Farrell Street to see Behind the Green Door. That is obscenity, my friend, and those are restricted going to minors. If you don't know about it, look it up. You'll
Well,
learn.
even Scalia said that.
Fratricide could be our name of the day. You were saying, Nicole.
Oh, I was just going to say that even Scalia said that the video game industry's voluntary rating system already accomplishes that to a large extent.
Yeah.
Like, we already self-govern.
And he said that, this is supposed to be there to assist parents, except he's also pointed out he's not aware of these parents asking for assistance.
Yes.
It's that they kind of created a solution to a problem no one had identified.
But then one of the dissenting opinions pointed out something actually kind of smart, which is that the industry itself says that these games should be out of the hands of people under the age of 17. So why wouldn't the law say the same thing? Why would you not want the law to say the same thing?
Well, because
kind of
I
an
mean,
interesting point,
and
but-
obviously, but the impact is that when you suddenly have criminal penalties, the potential to go to jail for a
$1,000
year,
Yeah.
fine.
you're just not going to stock
A
that on your
suggestion
shelves.
versus a law. I mean, that's scary.
Well, it's also if the store doesn't want to stock that on the shelves because they're worried they might get in trouble, then EA's not going to make the game that they're not going to stock on their shelves, and then you have the classic chilling effect on creativity. So
what happens now? I mean, are the forces that are allied against games that really want to see them banned for children, are they going to come up with a new strategy, or is this it? Is this the final head chopped off the Hydra, or is there another stage in the boss battle?
I think the thing is, it's kind of like those rare games where it's an RPG and you've gotten so powerful, you're just killing everybody.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, yes, there's probably going to be a couple more of these laws.
So we need
but
an
there's
expansion pack?
They're all going to
but
get
there-
shot down.
Yeah, but there's no sense of threat anymore. Like this,
Yeah.
this puppy has been put to rest, and that congratulations, game industry.
We can
Feels good.
finally
Good on
play
you.
violent video games, everybody.
No, we can play protected speech.
That's right. We can play violent protected speech.
Nicole, Team Fortress 2.
Yes.
No one's favorite 360 shooter, but very popular on the PC, is now free to play.
It is true. So last week, Valve had the Uber update, which was Monday through Wednesday class updates, upgrades to some of the classes day by day. And then on Thursday, they announced that their week-long free weekend, which doesn't make sense, but whatever, it's Valve,
That sounds like Valve.
would actually be free forever. Team Fortress 2 is going to be free forever. There will be no in-game ads, no subscription-based, and it will be all microtransaction-based. And they've been planning to do this since the Manco update, last September. So just keep buying hats.
So, I mean, are the kids happy? Because we know that when Valve does things that sound like a good idea, that people seem to have adverse reactions to it. So, I mean,
the kids that care already have Team Fortress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this might encourage them, maybe their friends to play. But, I mean, Team Fortress 2 is one of those games where if you're not good, you're going to get your ass handed to you.
Now,
So-
what does this mean for Team Fortress on Xbox?
Nothing.
Yeah, because I mean, you're really paying for Xbox
All
Live. You're
9
not paying,
people
you're not
playing
paying for
still,
that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess the only thing, Valve it's like the Beatles, or like Stalin. Everything that happens.
I'm waiting to find how this makes sense.
How are the Beatles like
the
Stalin?
the
gonna find out.
inscrutability, forces you to try to find meaning where maybe there is a
Okay,
meaning.
right on. Yellow Submarine, Under the Sea, cool.
If they're suddenly making Team Fortress 2 free to play, does that? I mean, I want to think that means there's something around the corner.
Yeah, is that progress the
Like something
timeline
with
for
a 3
TF3,
on it.
maybe?
Be it a T and an F or an H and an L.
We'll take either, really.
I mean, it's just that everyone thinks that something should be coming soon from them.
Well,
and this
they're going to
is-
be at Gamescom, right? I mean,
Everyone's at Gamescom but me.
oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Well, it's okay.
Well,
it's
then you have no
really,
announcements.
It's really smelly there.
Oh, I've never been.
Ask Steven Johnson.
Kind of smells.
It is kind of awe-inspiring. Are you going?
I haven't been assigned.
Okay,
So-
yeah. Just get that. What's the Vicks Vapor
Yeah,
Rub?
Vapor Rub.
Oh, wow, that bad.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
that bad.
it's in Europe. They don't.
Oh, it's Europe. Aw.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm all for smelly cheese on a plate.
Hold on.
That's
Not
how
a
I put it.
convention.
Look, I want to throw this out here. Given that Team Fortress 2 is now free, is this going to change how you guys perceive the game. I mean, the biggest issue with free to play is it just sounds too good. It's like there's something under the hood. There's something like that. I mean, does it sort of does it diminish what the game's import is because you're not assigning a dollar value to it anymore?
Well, that's a really good question, and I'm not really sure what the answer is. As somebody who played a little bit of Team Fortress but never got super into it just because everybody else was so much better than me.
Pick a game you like that's multiplayer and now it's free to play.
Okay, I see what you're saying. To me, it doesn't change the value, but I've been working at G4 for a long enough time that a lot of games I don't pay for, so they have a different idea of value to me than they do to the average consumer. Like, I understand that $60 for a game is a lot of money to a lot of people, so, it's a different standard.
Casey, I mean, given the fact that you exist in that MMO space, where you're seeing more and more free to play games,
it's generally moving toward that.
Now, do you think there's still a stigma?
I think we might be getting over it. Mm-hmm. I think the games that can charge $15 a month will, because they're super powerhouse games that have the equivalent of the nation of Austria playing them. But I think there's less of a stigma now. There are some really good A-list titles that are free to play that I don't think diminish the quality of the game at all. I think it actually gets... And generally, those games end up being more profitable as well.
Oh, no. I now believe it as a business model. It took me a while. Min Kim at Nexon, every time I would see him, I'm like, explain it to me again.
Yes.
I need to understand how you're making money on this.
And I think maybe a few years ago, it was true that when a game went free to play, it was kind of a death knell.
Yeah.
And now there are enough games that have turned around their sagging subscription numbers with a free to play model that it's a viable business model.
People are playing APB.
Where the business is they're giving the product away for free, but then you can buy things to help you along.
You get little tweaks here and there.
People love customization. I mean, it makes sense.
Farmville is the big one in all of that.
Huge. But there's a rumor right now that Microsoft is speaking with devs about having their own free to play game service on the Xbox 360, and that would use the MS store or MS points. So I think that there is still that stigma there, but I think that that's just the way things are going to go, especially for smaller games.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the thing is, and this is funny because this kind of mirrors a conversation we had yesterday about DLC, where you can buy things ahead of time, and people are always worried it's going to break the game. Yet no one seems to have those concerns anymore when it comes to free to play. We actually have confidence that they've balanced it out, or that whatever it is that's benefiting you isn't at somebody else's deficit.
If Microsoft isn't figuring out how to make free-to-play games, then they're crazy. Because, people are making a lot of money on these free-to-play games.
I think they could be figuring out free-to-play, but they're still crazy.
Yeah, maybe they're just crazy. How about this? I had this idea. What if we implemented free-to-play mechanics in actual life? Right? So you could get food, and that would be free. But if you wanted, good food, you had to pay for it. Come on. Am I blowing your mind? I am
kind of feeling to follow this.
I would do the trial subscription, I think. I don't know if I'm on board.
You do the trial subscription and you get a car, but it's just a car. But if you want a car that's red,
you know what that is? That's socialized eating.
I know.
All right, socialize everything.
Exactly.
Go move to Canada.
Be careful. Michelle Bachmann might come over and blow you up.
I apologize to the world of thinking people for having had that idea.
Or she might confuse you with John Wayne Gacy.
I'm not very good at having ideas. I'm sorry, everybody.
So, press release came out, I think it was Friday, that Star Wars Galaxies, which I didn't really think about still existing.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't think about it still existing.
Will cease to exist. In the middle of December. I remember when this game was announced. I remember, I was like, this is it. This is the game to end all games. Well, I was wrong.
Was it a similar feeling that people have for Old Republic? I don't remember when Galaxies was announced.
Yeah, because I thought MMO, Star Wars,
it
fully
makes
explorable
sense.
world. And I think that their intentions was something to be as ambitious as what they laid it out as. But, the MMO world, hadn't been...
It was still the early stages.
There was no World of Warcraft yet at this point.
Yeah.
And I think the others, I remember our review, Matt Kyle put it together, that he had a Wookiee, and it got killed by a dragonfly thing. And that didn't make much sense. Mm-hmm. It's a Wookiee. And it was just, but there were those things, if you knew Star Wars that well, the rules of the MMO at that time just didn't really...
Maybe it had malaria or something. the mosquito.
That's a slow-acting disease. You know,
That's
it's
a
little-
DOT.
logic
That's a
here.
damage
a
over
little
time. malaria.
quinine, you know. But more importantly, I last want to talk about the significance of Star Wars Galaxies. Then, as I said with Valve, I feel one can draw some other meaning out of this.
Perhaps.
Yes, it's a Sony online entertainment game, but LucasArts, you know, is at the top of the chain. They have this other Star Wars MMO that's coming
Oh,
out.
right. Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
So, I mean, do you think it'll come out around the time the Star Wars Galaxies ends? I mean, this seems to be an indication that we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, I would make a very smart bet that it's probably going to come out by December.
Like,
Now-
how soon? Like, because
By the
Galaxies
holidays,
close
maybe?
the 15th, and then that Tuesday is the 20th. Like, that soon would it come out?
Well, I mean, okay, Cataclysm came out the first or second week of December last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thinking is that no one really buys MMOs for other people as a gift. It's like kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
look, I just bought you a monthly subscription you have to
Let's
maintain.
not talk anymore.
It's something you get after your last final was done, and you
Yeah.
have 2 weeks of time before you have to go home.
Yeah.
And then additionally kill another 2 weeks of not talking to your family.
Which means that they don't have to. They're not really competing for the same kind of shelf space as Assassin's Creed, all
Yeah.
that stuff that wants to be a gift for the holiday season. So I mean, they can probably safely release really close to Christmas. I mean, I think we might be. I think we may have a good indication of when we're going to be playing this.
I'm cool
Not
with
to,
that.
not to be a buzzkill, but it could also just be that their contract is up in 2012, and so they got
I-
to kill the game
Yeah,
sometime in 2011.
Yeah,
So
there is. I mean, I think there have even been recent announcements of like new content for Galaxy. So I think that there might be another decision somewhere in some other strata
Yeah.
of the video game industry.
it's really depressing, though. Like I didn't even play the game. Like I played it once or twice, but it just makes me so sad that there's an entire world that's going to cease to
gonna
exist.
go
Well,
away.
we
It's gonna be
actually posted
gone.
on the G4 blog
It's
today
tragic.
about a private server that is running Galaxy's pre-combat upgrade that regularly updates. So,
Oh, this is the combat upgrade that made it slightly
Yes.
tolerable.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
A large group of people are like, cannot stand this fun that we're all
so
having.
all of those people can still play on this, and you can find out
Yeah.
more at g4tv.com.
I mean, I have to be frank. I have something of a question about a lot of the Star Wars Galaxies fans. It was very unfortunate that when the lead designers took his own life about 3 years ago, and large groups of fans of this were saying the most horrible things about him because they considered him responsible for the combat upgrade. And this game seems to epitomize that demented world that fanboyism and like not having enough human contact can really get to. So
And,
the game's going away.
And definitely SWTOR is going to pick up that audience. Like
I
those,
think so.
Those
I mean,
trolls are going to go right over to
I don't know.
SWTOR.
Oh,
It's-
boy.
it's-
And then they're
I
going
don't
to
know,
talk about
but-
how
but
horrible it is compared to
I don't know.
Galaxies.
Or that the mere fact that it's accessible ruins it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, it's fun. Stop.
I can't handle this.
Speaking of MMOs, the one that we don't talk about as much, which I think is going to be a very, very significant release, is Guild Wars 2. You got a chance to go out there and play it. Would you mind just starting out by kind of contextualizing? Guild Wars started small, but it has really grown into a very significant contender out there.
I was up at ArenaNet last week to fool around with Guild Wars 2 a little bit. I am actually going to go out on a limb and say this. I think that Guild Wars 2 is going to be the next big MMO. I think it's going to beat SWTOR. I think it is going to be a better game than SWTOR.
What about World of Warcraft? How do you
I don't know if anything is ever going to take World of Warcraft down, but as far as jockeying for second position, I think with SWTOR you're going to see a lot of people sign up initially. They're going to find out that it is a very well-made game in the Star Wars universe that doesn't really offer a lot of innovation. And when they see what Guild Wars is doing, they're going to be shocked.
Okay, so what is Guild Wars doing? 'Cause
Okay.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did the first Guild Wars, did it play in a more traditional way?
Slightly more traditional, but it was also still very strange in the world of MMOs. It was the first big sort of free-to-play MMO.
I remember that.
That really shook up that MMO space. Before then, every game was charging $15 or $20 a month. It was a very strange and complicated game that, as you said, was a slow burn. And they really, like, the dev team spent a lot of time working on the issues. They improved the game throughout its lifespan. There are still people working on Guild Wars 1, and they're going to keep it as a viable game for now. But Guild Wars 2, the things that it is doing, every time I hear something about Guild Wars 2 and what they're planning on doing, I'm really excited. Even things as simple as you will not have a dedicated healing class. which is anathema to MMOs. Like, you need a dedicated healer to loiter over the group about how everyone's not doing their job properly, or it's not an MMO
backseat
group.
drive.
Well,
Yes.
you need somebody to blame also when you wipe.
Yes,
to go,
and when
well,
you
if
wipe,
you've been
you
healing
all
me,
need
I
to
wouldn't
yell
have
at the
wiped.
priest. But this is, in terms of gameplay, in terms of quest structure, in terms of storytelling, everything about this game is going to be great. They really are trying to make it play like an RPG. There's not going to be, well, first off, when you roll a character, you basically determine your character's backstory. So you're given like a short questionnaire of things like, when I was young, I always wished I joined the circus, or, you know, I lost my parents in a fire.
Kind of like Mad Libs.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
kind of like Mad Libs, but these questions will pop up in your personal quest line throughout the game, and it's not all at once. It's going to be like kind of sprinkled throughout
Well,
the
this
world.
sounds at least similar to what SWTOR is trying to do, which is to give that BioWare choice,
Yeah.
and of affecting how the game plays out.
But what is even more interesting in this is the way that the quest structure is working, because it's not, you won't have someone standing around with an exclamation point over their head, where you go and see a block of text that's like an EULA agreement that you just click accept and ignore. These are, it is a living, breathing, dynamic world where things happen, and if you choose to act on them, your actions have consequences. So they have an example of you can be running through an area and someone will run up to you and say, oh, our village is being attacked by Minotaurs. Can you please help us? And if you ignore them, the Minotaurs will come into that village, take it over, start building siege weapons, attack the next town over where you can't get to your trainers anymore, you can't buy the equipment that you need, and it's a living, breathing world. And these events will happen, on a schedule. Every single event has dozens of branches, dozens of different directions you can go with all of these different things. Beyond that, they showed off dungeons for the first time, which is going to be their sort of form of instances in MMO speak. And these also are varying branches of storytelling. They really play like an awesome D&D campaign. We ran through one, and the developers were talking to us. We took a left and a right and another left. And he said, like, if you took that last right, there is a chance that a troll could bust through the wall and attack you and like grab someone from your party and you kidnap them. But it's a random die roll when you're running through that dungeon. So it might happen, it might not happen. It's going to be awesome.
Is it also free to play?
It is free to play.
So then what are you paying for?
You will pay for the game when you first buy it. Guild Wars also ran. They did two expansions that you had to pay for, and they're also be doing microtransactions. But as they said, all the microtransactions will not be things that you will need to play the game. They'll be all aesthetic things.
Okay, it is just aesthetic.
Yeah, it's just aesthetic.
Now, that's my one question: is does that work with a Western audience? That's a very, very Asian model that does seem to work because sort of the paper doll qualities of stuff like MapleStory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The aesthetics are so important.
I think with a game like Guild Wars where so much is invested in storytelling and your character, I think you're going to want to try to make you want that hat that says,
I want that pip
this
hat.
is me. Yeah.
Such
I want
a
my
me
purple
hat.
pip hat.
I could see if you're walking around the starting level area and there's a bunch of guys that look just like you, you'd be like, you know what, I gotta get
I need
something.
a new jacket.
I gotta.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of money on pets. Like, not even because I was a priest when I played WoW, so I couldn't have a good pet. So I would just spend money on pets to follow me.
Yeah.
Just stupid things. So yes.
Yeah.
So she just had kind of like a line of
Buy those.
rabbits and puppies.
I had a
and,
Siamese cat for a while.
Well, that's
It was
nice.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they follow you
Yeah.
into danger?
Yeah, well,
But they're defenseless
They
animals.
did nothing. It
Well,
was
they-
like that they weren't even there. It was
They're just your
completely
pals.
pointless.
But,
But I'm really happy that Guild Wars 2 is finally getting attention from us, because it's definitely going to be worthy of it. And you heard it here first. I think it's going to be better than SWTOR. I think people are going to be happy with Guild Wars 2 than SWTOR.
Well, I mean, it definitely, as with SWTOR, sounds like these two games are trying to move the MMO into a new sophisticated direction
Yes.
that kind of gets closer to what we expect from a single-player RPG and getting that type of stuff into the game
Yeah,
itself.
I saw it at a GDC, and I thought that the art style is what made it look so much more grown up.
And that's another thing. This game started with a paintbrush. They started.
Not an idea.
Yeah, they
dream.
started
A dream.
working.
a wish and a hope.
They actually started
paintbrush.
working on Guild Wars 2 because they had their art team making new things for Guild Wars, and they really liked the way that these new things were looking, and they decided that they couldn't fit it in the lore of Guild Wars 1. So Guild Wars 2 is 250 years later in the land of Tyria, so there's technology and big dragons killing everything. So it was literally started because the
Like
painters.
Reign of Fire?
Yes, with more guns. It was literally started because painters and artists made cool-looking things that inspired the lore masters and the writers to create a new
Okay,
world
I
around
like
it.
that. I like that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I just Yes, I'm with you on that one completely. Well, is there some stuff up on the site, it sounds?
There's a ton of stuff on the
Great.
website. Leah Jackson and I went up there, and she spent about 47 hours playing the game straight.
That sounds like
Wasn't
Leah
enough for
Jackson.
her, yeah.
Yes. And MMO report this week will be all Guild Wars 2 as well.
So I want to move. Wow, we're going to really shift gears here between games. Guild Wars 2 to Shadow of the Damned from the irrepressible. I don't think I've ever said that on the show before.
That's a good one.
Irrepressible Suda51 of No More Heroes fame, and Shinji Mikami, obviously the man who's behind the Resident Evil series, except for Resident Evil 5. They got together to make a game that's really strange.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's the best way of putting it.
It's kind of like a punk rock survival horror third-person shooter, is how I would describe it.
And you're saving your girlfriend from a demon.
Well, she's pretty much already been kidnapped, so you're kind of just going after her. You suck at saving.
In hell.
In hell.
And you have a gun that used to be a demon.
Recovering demon.
A recovering demon that becomes a gun or a torch. And various types of guns, one of which called the boner. Guess what? Because it shoots bones.
Yeah,
That's why it's called the boner.
It's accurate. And then it upgrades to the hot boner, and then there's a point in the game where it gets bigger, and it's...
Yeah, well, there's also another
big boner?
character in the
Called the
game
big
called
boner.
One-Eyed Willie.
Yes, and he poops, and that's your saving point.
Yeah, and...
So, did Scalia play this game?
yes.
Question.
Supreme Court, ban it.
No, it's actually a really fun game, and I think that there's so many different parts of it that worked. I think the combat was great, and like you say that there's only because Johnson, the demon.
Yes, that's right. His name is Johnson.
His name is Johnson.
Nice.
He can you can melee with him, and then there's also the three guns, which is the automatic pistol, machine gun, and then the shotgun. And there's upgrades for those. There's kind of these weird RPG elements here and there, and then you have the Silent Hill guy doing. I wrote his name. Akira Yamaoka, who did the Silent Hill soundtrack, did the soundtrack for this. The audio is great. I mean, the combat's great, and the dialogue is just really. It's stupid, but it's really funny.
And you know what? Compared to Duke Nukem, which we were talking about last time, it's stupid in attempts to offend, but it has the right kind of tone.
Yeah, it works.
It works. I mean, you have to like that kind of humor, or else
Yeah.
you're going to find this game insufferable.
But like I do like that kind of humor, and I didn't like the humor of Duke Nukem, and
Right.
it's just like not all jokes are created equal.
But it's also one seems to be self-aware and one does not.
Right.
And I think that's where it really is. I mean, the things I noticed with the game is it controls a little bit more like Resident Evil 4 and 5 than I think is necessary.
Well, you can
And
move and shoot.
Yeah, it's just knowing to have to do that quick pivot and like it takes a little while to get it doesn't help you with the auto target and yes, you can make it go fast, but it also did not present that as much of a problem as I found in Resident Evil 5 all the time. Now the other thing is this is only because Alice came from EA Partners just only a couple weeks earlier or maybe a week earlier. It's another one of those very depopulated worlds where it's just everything's just like there's just no one around. Granted, it's hell,
Well,
so it has a pretty good excuse
Yeah.
for that.
I mean, as you get farther into game, there are other people there. But spoiler.
No, hell is other people. I knew that. No.
But I think what's interesting to me is that this game, I mean, if it's not your humor, you may find it offensive. It's not that bad. But I just don't understand why EA didn't promote this game at all.
It's an excellent question. I went into my local GameStop and I asked for it on the day that it came out, and the lady there was like, "What are you talking about?" She had to go look for it. I mean, that's not good.
No,
I mean,
it's an EA game. Like, that's a huge
well,
publisher.
it's an EA Partners game, and so I think that sometimes those arrangements are slightly different. They have a different type of investment in it. That could be it. I mean, but it's definitely quirky. It's not as quirky as No More Heroes. I think that's worth pointing out. Or Killer 7. It's really left field, but you know how left field Suda51 can actually get.
The box cover says a Suda51 trip.
Yes.
Like that's how they pitch it.
It sounds like it's so incredibly hard to sell that they just said, why bother?
Actually,
take this.
The market for it'll find it,
your
but everybody
hero
else
is a Latino bounty hunter. Now Johnson the demon speaks with a rather perky,
English
lilting
accent.
English accent, but
Hello?
keeps on calling. Because I can't remember the main character's name.
Garcia.
He keeps on calling him G. Now, granted, that is G for Garcia, but it also sounds like this lilting British voice is trying to do kind of American urban rap speak. It's just like, well, G. And it really is kind of funny. Sure. But yeah, it's definitely, it's one of those ones where it's nice for the summer because, probably
It's
if it came out at the end of the year.
Summer.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to play right now.
So, I want to do one more round robin. Speaking of Duke Nukem, what are some of the game franchises we'd like to bury? A lot of these franchises continue to sell well, but why do we still buy them? Are we buying them because we trust the brand or because we like what's comfortable more than what's innovative? The industry seems to salivate over new ideas, but consumers salivate over titles they recognize. Obviously, this is what comes up every single week. But, I mean, do you think the consumers also want the familiar?
Yes.
We complain that it's just the industry is too timid and only does the familiar. But there is a yin and a yang, some kind of symbiotic relationship.
I think it's much easier for the industry to sell something that's familiar than it is to try and get people to understand some new thing.
Especially to newer casual gamers.
Yeah. And also, I mean, $60 a game. It's
Yeah, you want to make a safe decision.
That's why you just got to throw "vil" on the end of it. People love that.
Add a
They
number
love
to
that
it.
"vil."
I mean, the price of a game is more comparable to like a Broadway ticket, and probably all of us here could say that time that you whimsically went to the theater and really wish you had read up on what you're getting yourself into, because good theater is exceptional. Bad theater is one of the most miserable freaking experiences, especially if you're in a small black box theater and someone in the play.
That's
You
worse.
can't get up and walk out.
And you have to say something good to them
Yeah,
afterwards.
afterwards
Oh.
you're gonna have to go. That was really a play that you did.
But I definitely have two games that I think should go away.
What?
Cabela's Big Game Hunter. Come on.
But you want Small Game Hunter to stay.
Yeah, just no hunting. How about,
Oh, you just don't like hunting.
How
Okay.
about Cabela's Animal Rescue?
But isn't Call of Duty really Cabela's Human Hunter?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I want less. I don't
Cabela's
want games
the
that
most
are annual.
dangerous game.
The gaming industry should just steer away from that.
Nicole, I want to agree with you. I think the annual game it's tough. There's a phrase I like to say is, "How can I miss you if you won't go away?"
That's so fair.
And I used to feel that about Whoopi Goldberg back in the late '80s. I mean, by the time the telephone came out, I was like, "Okay, come on, let's take a break, do something else." And actually, she did. She had that talk show on late at night.
Good for her.
So yes, Call of Duty and Whoopi Goldberg, I have found equity between them. But
Your job is done.
It is, and it doesn't allow. It also, I think, it stagnates innovation because you can only make that much of a change. Even with something like Call of Duty, where you have various teams on it, still you're on a pretty tough cycle. And I know that Insomniac has to put games out frequently. They're an independent company that they have to produce or survive. But this Resistance is going to have sort of the longest gap between, I think, any of the games they've done. And that's why I'm very excited that extra time with that creative
You've had
group of
time to
people,
miss it.
you could also they can really come up with that new thing that they wanted to do, but just because of a production
Which is
schedule,
3D.
not 3D, not 3D. No, not 3D. You know what? Let's go back to the Supreme Court thing.
Yeah.
Because Alito was talking about how adding emotion control, especially this 3D thing, was really going to heighten the realism, heighten the realism.
Didn't work.
He needs to play some 3D games.
I think we should send him a system.
Yeah.
I just it's like
Instead of a
it's like
3DS,
really.
you can have a thing.
Try this, then let me know.
He also mentioned a vest that gamers wear.
Well, no, they were showing that at GDC 2 years ago. I mean, it's one of those things they
It
show
didn't
at
really
GDC.
catch on.
Yeah, exactly. Because guess
Was
what?
it like
I
an
don't have
impact
one.
vest?
Yeah,
or-
because
Okay.
most gamers, myself included, I play games to not hurt.
Yeah.
It's same
my
with,
own lack of
same with
experience.
drinking.
Punched in the
Okay.
face by the game.
if you don't get hit enough at school,
I mean,
you can hit home by your video games.
Alito's concurring opinion does read like Future Shock. Like, whoa, the world's getting out of control. I don't understand this. Just like at the same time, remember when Bill Clinton started to worry about bioterrorism because he read like some kind of Robert Ludlum novel about bioterrorism? I mean, it was just like, no. I mean, you know that Nixon used to watch Patton every night during the Vietnam War. It's not good.
It's a long movie.
I know. It's just like
He had a lot of time on his hands.
But I mean, it's one of those like fact, fiction, and context. So I think go context, everyone.
Yeah.
All right,
Context.
Go context, and clearly Mr. Antonin Scalia has that.
Go Scalia. Come on,
Scalia.
everybody.
Come on,
Give
round
it
it
up.
up.
Let's
And
give
you
it
know
to
what?
Scalia
First
first.
Throw him a bone.
Actually, let's also put credit where credit is due. The Entertainment Software Association, based in Washington, D.C., were obviously the ones at the helm of this court case. And they have been working. I know most of the guys there. They have been working on this for years and years and years. And I believe as we speak right now, there's some very drunk people in a bar in Washington, D.C.
I hope
and
so.
they so freaking deserve it. So congratulations to everyone over there. Thank you so much to our panel for joining us. This is Feedback. We will be back next week Once again, discussing protected speech in the form of mass entertainment. It's been a good week. It's only Monday. What more could happen?
Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of X-Play, editor-in-chief at G4TV.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on G4TV.com.